What's the most NSFW thing you've done at work? Story 1. I work in EMS. For a long term, we were excused from the HR meetings about harassment, but because of an incident before I got hired, we all had to go to a sexual harassment training with other regular office government employees. It was pretty cringe because they clearly had no idea what we dealt with. At one point, the presenter was describing how we should report whenever someone makes a reference to anything sexual so it can be addressed, to which a medic asked if that included the patients who masturbated in front of us in the back of the ambulance. The presenter's only response was, "Oh my God, does that really happen?" We never had to go to an HR meeting again after that, probably because they were not equipped for the reality of our problems. Story 2. Employee at my old job found two employees doing it in the docking bay and went to go tell the store manager and found the Sturtle manager doing the assistant Sturtle manager in their office. Update: the person telling thought it was funny not to get people in trouble. No one got fired from this. The whole store had to leave because everyone was getting paid too well. Story 3. I work as a coffin carrier at a very religious private graveyard. One of them tried to open the coffin to see if his face looked good enough before we buried him. He used a Mossberg 500 shotgun as a method of suicide. Story 4. Sex on the conference room table right before a meeting. The room had a smell, so the complaint went. Story 5. While trying to repair a malfunctioning electronic device, I noticed someone had wrapped frayed wiring with regular desk-grade Scotch tape about 0.05 seconds before touching it. Edit: congratulations to you folks who know about what voltage will or won't kill a person. I am not qualified to make that distinction, and as such should not have been tasked with making a repair to such a device by people who are office workers and who also have no electrical certification or qualification. Story 6. Bricklayer here, another bricklayer was going around at tea and lunchtime and nailing people's toolboxes to the scaffold. He does this one day and proceeds to go home early and hides his tools very badly on the scaffold we were working on. So one of the blokes decides to take a shit in his toolbox and shut it up. This was on a Friday. It was there all weekend. Story 7. Dumb 20 years old me got caught rubbing one out by my butchy lesbian boss in our single-stall shop bathroom when she walked in on me, forgot to lock it. Owner's daughter, small family company. She later told me she was bi and wasn't offended, knew I was young and had urges. She was 34, but to use her personal bathroom from now on because it was closer to my desk or service counter and it would keep my production up. Story 8. I once made a massive pot of cheese broccoli soup while tripping balls on LSD. Didn't get fired for that though. Did, however, eventually get fired for getting very good at throwing steak knives at boxes of potatoes in the prep kitchen. I was very good at it and usually very stoned, so I would lose track while washing dishes. So one day they came in for silverware to roll and every knife in the restaurant was stuck in the potatoes. I went out on a good note. I was training a guy that night too. Story 9. I work at a fetish clothing boutique, frequently adding new products to our webpage. My most amusing one is definitely spending the majority of my day censoring penises in sheer underwear. Story 10. I worked in different labs as a phlebotomist, sometimes with a receptionist, and sometimes I did everything and held down the lab by myself. My GF came and gave me a BJ during one of the times I was by myself. Granted, it was slow, but pretty funny still. If someone came for blood work, I'd have to zip up and deal. Edit: slow at the lab, normal pace BJ if I recall. Story 11. My manager got caught fucking the cook in the walk-in, and instead of firing the manager, they just moved the cook to a different store because there was no evidence, just hearsay. But a week or so later, she got caught in the act with another coworker. They both got fired. That's Denny's for you. Story 12. Microwaved a grape in the work microwave. For the scientists, cut a grape in half, leaving a small amount connected, creating an 8 pattern. Put it in a microwave, turn on, and it creates a plasma, superheated gas. Anyway, to stop it spitting, I put some kitchen roll underneath. Unfortunately, the superheated gas ignited the paper and we had a small fire. Did I get in trouble? Nope. The whole team was watching, even my boss. Fun times. Story 13. My first job at 15 was an ice cream hot dog stand on the beach. I made a lot of outrageous desserts for myself and friends and would do whippets with all the whipped cream. It was a friend and me that worked there together, and we just get high all day. It was the best first job, no supervision, and despite our being high and slacking, we were a busy store and made enough money for the boss he didn't care. He just wanted someone to open the place and not burn it down. Also, I sold LSD at another job. Quit a job by locking the bathroom, clogging the toilet, and climbing out of a window. I helped smuggle some art over international borders. I house sat for a boss and his daughter came over thinking he was out of town and nobody was there, had sex in his bed. Borrowed a company van for a weekend and drove 6 of my friends from Florida to New Orleans, blacked out partying, and woke up back home minus the van. When I was a bar back, I'd get my stuff set up, and then I'd help bands load in equipment before the bar was busy. Did a lot of drugs with bands on the clock. Worked at Publix for 1 week and ate an entire birthday cake from the bakery by myself on a dare, and went home sick. When I worked at a warehouse, I found the only key to a storage closet nobody used and converted it into a tiny private bedroom so I could take naps on the clock. I've farted on customers. Once went on a business trip with colleagues, the hotel messed up my supervisor's reservation, and they were overbooked for a convention, so I offered her my room, and we ended up sleeping together yada yada for 6 months until the boss found out and I was fired. Had a boss I knew did shady stuff, and he offered me a job driving a van of something 12 hours north to Durpov, leaving the van and taking a flight home. He told me it was risky and not to look in the back. I did the job. Brought pot brownies to work for select cool people, but they were too strong and I got busted and fired. Couldn't fit an artwork in the elevator, so I took the elevator 1 floor down and opened the door and stood on top of the elevator in the shaft and rode the painting up to the 11th floor that way. Also, I am known to get obliterated at work Christmas parties, and apparently there's more stuff related to that I could list. Story 14. Crawled underneath a 500-ton injection molding machine while it was running. Jumped off a 6-foot electrical cabinet and barely stuck the landing. Performed percussive maintenance on a 480-volt relay with exposed contacts by repeatedly hitting it with a bare hand. Walked underneath a 6,400-pound bucket mold hanging from the overhead crane. That one wasn't intentional. I wasn't paying attention and was looking down. Pay attention, folks. Edit. I should note that for anyone that may be curious, 500 tons is the rated force the machine can generate, not its weight. Story 15. Covered a table with newspapers that had no qualms with showing off topless models. It was my first week interning at a PR firm, and one of my tasks was to read the weekend's papers to look for any coverage of their products. Eventually, an employee came over and sheepishly apologized for not warning me about the risque content in the red top papers, LOL. For that same job, I also had to collect a lad's mag from a newsagent's and walk with it through central London because I'm an idiot who forgot to ask for a bag. Story 16. I had a bad beef and bean burrito just before a major meeting. I get a funny tummy before big meetings anyway, but this felt hella different. 5 minutes before the meeting is supposed to start and I Hail Mary it to the nearest men's room, kicked the cubicle down, lowered my pants. I don't let my ass cheeks touch the seat in public toilets, so I hover my fat ass right above the toilet seat when I poop, and went to town all inside the toilet. I noticed after a few seconds the stench was incredible and my ass felt hella wet and sticky. I peered over my shoulder and looked down to see that in my haste I had forgotten to put the toilet lid up, so what I had effectively done was take the biggest, wettest, stinkiest shit of my life on top of a toilet lid cover. Just a huge pile of shit sitting stagnant on top of the toilet lid. I didn't have time to let the horror set in, so I wiped up, washed my hands, and ran the fuck out of there feeling so much better tummy-wise. An hour later, the meeting had finished. I ran to the toilets to clean it all up best I could, because I'm an idiot, not a dick. And when I got there, there was an out-of-order sign on the door. Janitor was outside putting on some thick fucking gloves. I asked what happened, to which he replied, "A group of people decided it would be funny to shit all over the toilet." I was like, fuck, some people, huh? Never spoke about this again. Story 17. Used to work at a large entertainment venue that was badly run and everyone knew it was losing money and would be shut down soon. Staff started to get a bit wild, knowing we only had a few months of employment there at best. Most of us were drunk within an hour or two of clocking in. Joints became the norm on cigarette breaks, and often the manager would come for a quick toke too. I was dating another employee, so we'd sometimes sneak off to change a barrel in the cellar and bang down there. The clientele seemed to get wind of this attitude too. One time we noticed a group of men all gathered around one table cheering. On closer inspection, they were watching a mature lady fist herself on the table. Probably the greatest few months of paid work I'll ever experience. Story 18. Used to be a manager at a Walgreens in Las Vegas. Had a girl I worked with who was also a manager that worked a similar shift as me. She was kind of a nympho, and once I found this out, she loved to brag about her exploits. I jokingly suggested one day that she could suck my cock anytime she wanted. Yes, I know that's horrible sexual harassment, but this chick was not the type to be fazed by something like that, and I knew it, so it wasn't a big deal. Long story short, she loved the idea, much to my surprise, and over the next few months would give me a blowjob in the stockroom once a week. Swallowed in everything, was an absolute champ, and gave the most mind-blowing head that even to this day has seen no comparison from any other woman I have been with romantically. Sadly, we eventually got caught. I think she started bragging to coworkers about it. The company couldn't do anything to us since they didn't have any proof. Just a complaint from one of the cashiers. The very next day, Walgreens installed a very fancy 360-degree fisheye camera that could see every inch of that room. LOL. She gave me maybe like 2 more BJs in other odd parts of the store, but by then everyone knew about it, so the excitement had worn off. It was a lot of fun while it lasted. Had never or ever since done anything like that, but sometimes you just gotta live a little. Story 19. If you consider paid tutoring in high school being at work, then here is a story for you. I was a senior at the time and a TA for the class my girlfriend was in. She needed help, and her parents paid me to tutor her. Since I was the TA, I had access to the test in advance, so we would go through the test and answers while tutoring her in her room with her parents downstairs. We would have the sex, and once the tutoring was done, her parents would pay me for my time. This occurred regularly during the semester, and of course, she got an A key in the class. Story 20. Wife and I were having sex on my desk at the office one evening when we heard security doing their rounds. She got under my desk, and I just made it look like I was working. So when security came by my desk, she was giving me a blowjob. The security person even stopped and chatted for a moment. After that, we knew they wouldn't be coming back for an hour, so we went to the conference room and completely stripped down and went at it on the conference room table. The following day, I had a huge grin on my face when I was in a meeting with the CIO, and he was sitting at the end of the table that she was laying on. Story 21. Banged my ex-girlfriend on my desk. Mind you, she was already my ex. We had stayed friends. When we were together, we would always shag in places we might get caught. In the dressing room of Busy Gap, on a private beach, on the top of an observation tower at a national park, on an empty NYC subway car at 3 a.m. Seems incredibly stupid now, but was fun back in the day. FTR, we never got caught. Story 22. High school job at a frozen yogurt shop. I closed alone a lot, so my GF would come in and hang out after close with me. Needless to say, I hit every base while on the clock at that job and never got caught. On a different part of the spectrum, I used to work third shift security at a Facebook data center for several years, starting back when it was under construction. I would walk around the massive, empty, dark building all night with a grinder and pipe on me. Whenever I wanted to smoke, I just went up to the roof. We didn't have a third shift supervisor until after the first building was completed, so I got to do that for a good while. Still dabbed every night before shift after that. Story 23. First job out of college in 1998 was at SAIC. Internet was new. I was new to an office setting, and I found it amazing I could just browse porn at work on my computer. That lasted a week or two before someone came and told me that management could see our internet searches. Immediately thought, uh-oh, but returned to work the following day, forgot all about this, and proceeded to look up more porn. I was politely asked to leave and not return again the following day. Story 24. Was the manager at a small, mid-sized grocery store once upon a time. Started working there when I was 14 or so and worked there for 11 years, working up to manager. The pay was awful and the hours were insane, but it gave me the freedom to pursue a musical career at the same time to a certain degree of success. As the manager, I had access to a bedroom upstairs which had a desk, a kitchenette, and a bed. The grocery store was in a plaza with 2 popular college bars, and across the street from a college and a dorm. I made friends with the servers in both bars and would be invited for drinks after my shift with them. Also made friends with a lot of the girls in the college. Having access to the bedroom upstairs came in very handy for small after parties, which would end up having booze and drugs involved. And the bed there was very useful for sexy times. Some of the wildest times in my life were at this grocery store party where Cole was entering in the upstairs bedroom. As long as we cleaned up and got out before the owner got in at 9 a.m., we would be fine. The night shift did not care and were my friends anyways, so they would sneak the odd drink or two from us and enjoyed the company during an otherwise boring shift. Did I get away with all this? Yes and no. I always made sure to clean up and air out the room well ahead of the owner showing up. And I was a stickler to make sure nothing was ever stolen from the store or the bedroom back areas. I left that job in my mid-20s and recently at a funeral for an ex-coworker from that store, I ran into the owner again. We all went to a bar afterwards. I asked him if that bedroom upstairs was still there, and he said that in the renovations, it got gutted and turned into a walk-in fridge or freezer or something. I said that it was a shame and that it was a great room. He said, "Oh, I bet you missed that room." He ended up sharing that he knew what was going on the whole time but just didn't care because nothing was being broken or stolen, and all the work that needed to get done was getting done. And if police ever came for some reason, he would have just played dumb and I'd have taken the blame. Story 25. Had keys, got fucked up and decided to go into work to bang my girlfriend, and did so in multiple areas. Also had a brother like Mate who I was extremely close with and slapped his face with my penis. I also spat in a manager's sandwich cause he pissed me off. Another one of my managers also took me to the pub during shift and literally just left the place in control of whoever. I got pretty pissed as well, so couldn't return. I also used to frequently get staff members high during lunch breaks, as I had built up a near superhuman tolerance to the sinister minister and knew other staff hadn't. I would then sadistically watch them try to engage with customers with varying degrees of chronic failure. It was hilarious. Edit, for the record, the guy whose face I slapped with my dick. That was just the relationship we had at the time. I was actually engaged to him for a year. Though we were not gay for each other or anything, we just found shit like that funny.